Hi, so I'm KB with Nerdophiles. How are you?
Hi, good to meet you. I like your backdrop on there. That's nice. Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you. Thank you. Lovely to meet you as well. Well, what a great series. What I really loved about Dope Thief is that it not only examines kind of the corruption within the DEA, but at the heart of it, it really dives deeply into the depths of grief, found
Mm.
family, and how generational trauma can really impact every single choice that people make. So, for you, what was the most kind of creatively challenging part about balancing these themes, particularly with Ray and Manny, and just making sure that whether or not the audience agreed with their choices, that there was still kind of a layer of humanity and empathy woven into their journeys?
So I got to tell you, that's such a good question that I wish I could use it for some of my answers later in terms of like that. That's so true. Okay, so the first part, how do you get all that together and how do you balance all that? Part of it, I would say, is how intelligent Brian is as an actor and how intelligent Wagner is as an actor, and to be able to collaborate with those guys. Because I do like to take all those themes and all those things and just put them in a bag and shake them up. And I feel like when you have our character Ray is a very intelligent guy with big blind spots. And that's how Brian and I both saw him. And those big blind spots come from all of this trauma. And how do you once you get a handle on the trauma, Brian and I sat down and we really worked it all out. Once you get a handle on all of that, you can really start to see how somebody's psyche is working around that all of the time and trying to problem solve kind of with one hand because he's so. And that's what we were trying to do with these strange flashbacks that don't really flash back. They stay in the present to show how his trauma was his past trauma was constantly informing the way he was making decisions in the present, and really opening new wounds persistently. When you have two actors like this, you can kind of do any of it because what was amazing about working with both of them is you could just throw another ball. You could say, "Remember this, Brian. Remember that your shoulder hurts. Brian, remember the grief here." Not everybody can do that, and these two guys can do that. And so what you wind up with is this just like phenomenal layered performance from both of them, and that was where I got to just sit back and witness it and be, grateful.
Well, they both did a brilliant job. I mean, your trio did an incredible job. And I'm grateful that you mentioned that, just kind of those flashbacks being the present, because I was wondering if that was a strategic choice to kind
Yeah,
of have him also, in some of them, still be his age while having, every other character kind of in that flashback be in the past.
right.
I thought that was kind of a brilliant way to, again, show that his trauma is still with him, it's following him, and that those ghosts kind of still haunt him, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Marin too in that too, because Marin's the same. I mean, she has this incredible theater background, and it makes her so versatile and so great on her feet. To go to the flashback question, yeah, it was very intentional, and it was something I worked out with our pilot DP Eric Messerschmidt that we wanted to do it in a way that never broke any momentum, and that really showed that instead of going back to the past, actually the past was just kind of snowballing onto the future. And every time, that's why they happen after all the new traumas. Every time there's a trauma, he looks over and he feels the same texture of a previous trauma. And the whole show is really about trying to get through that and break that cycle of just living trauma to trauma to trauma to trauma. And addiction. I mean, you can't really talk about the show without talking about the fact that they're both kind of addicts in some stage of recovery or in some stage of relapse.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's true. But thank you so much for that because I just think it's such a brilliant series, just the way that the pieces are woven together. And I appreciate you letting me know that after every new trauma, there's a flashback because I didn't realize that. But now I see those pieces coming together just having watched all 8 episodes. So, I mean, what a fantastic series that I cannot wait for audiences to see. And just thank you so much for taking the time to chat with Nerdophiles. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Loved it. Thank you. It was
Have a
great to
great
talk to you.
day.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks. Hey, I'm KB with Nerdophiles. How are you both?
Hey, I
How
know
are you?
you.
Hey, yes, great to see you again and lovely to meet you, Wagner.
Loving to meet you too.
Let's dive in. What a great series.
Thank you.
What I really, really enjoyed about it is just how deeply nuanced and layered every single episode is. And while it examines the corruption within the DEA, at the belly of it, it really dives deep into the depths of grief, found family, and how generational trauma can impact every single choice that people make. So, for each of you as actors, what was the most creatively challenging part of balancing these themes as Ray and Manny? And what creative choices did you make in your portrayals of these characters to weave in kind of deep layers of humanity and empathy into their journeys? And I'll start with you first, Brian.
Oh, I knew you were going to do that. I was like, oh, we'll give this to Wagner.
Good that you started first. That's a very complex question.
You know, these are great questions, by the way. It's interesting that you talk about generational trauma because, you know, when you meet Ray in this show, you can see that he's dealing with a lot of that and a lot of grief. You clearly are meeting a man who has dealt with a lot of loss, a lot of instability of like relationships that he thought he knew and that were taken from him at different points in his life. But the one relationship that has remained constant is his relationship with Manny and what that kindredness looks like, what that kinship looks like. You know, like I was very attracted to this concept of this was so beyond brotherhood to me. There was something that was much more layered between the two of them, so much so that it started to feel like a love story in a way of these two men who had gone through the system of Philly, who had gone through being outcasts, who had gone through like not really having family, trying to figure out relationships, and they were all each other had. And that really gave them nowhere to hide, honestly. Like it really gave us nowhere to hide. And what I love about doing it all with Wagner was proximity, honestly, because you can meet a lot of actors who are very, you know, play it very close to the chest, who don't really, you know, and the first thing with Wagner was, for me, was about touch. Like how close we can be. Can I lay my head on his shoulder? Are we able to really be in the murk together? And that's him as a person. And so then once you started adding those layers into our characters, you started to see this relationship develop that you were just like, oh, right, there's a need for these two to be together. There's a need for these two to survive together. And you also wanted to unpack this stuff for them at the same time. I found so many times in this show that I was just like, oh, Ray, if you just let this go, man, just let this go. Like, just you're beating a dead horse. Or when it would come to Manny, like there were moments in the show where Ray loses Manny and you can really see Ray losing himself. And that really reflects in Brian and Wagner. Cause like when Wagner's not there, like, I'm just like, what you mean he's not on set today? I don't understand what this means, but it's pure. I think it's love at its purest form, and I don't think we've seen a relationship reflected like that in a long time, and that's what really drew me very closely to wanting to do this show, especially once you get the opportunity to work with and meet a man like Wagner. It just elevated everything. Yeah, I don't know, man. You just brought out the best parts of me, and
likewise. This was very you asked a very complex question for a very complex relationship.
Yeah.
Because it's first of all, I love the fact that this is a very violent show, right? But check it out, it's very violent,
very violent,
and it feels like a cliche, like a black and a Latino man involved in the drug dealing situation. But when you get closer to the characters, you see that they are the opposite of the cliche of macho testosterone action thing. They don't want to be there. You know? They don't want to be there. They're not good at it.
Didn't ask for it. Didn't want it.
They're not good at it, and they spend the entire show trying to escape from that cycle of violence, and that reflects in their relationship too. Because Manny, I think this is the most vulnerable character that I have ever played in my life. Is emotional all the time, very emotional and very dependent from this relationship with me, which is the only form of love that he knows. Is this relationship? They really love each other, but Manny sees a way out, especially with Sherry, and he starts to understand that there is another future for him. But in order to break that cycle, he sort of has to break up with
Right.
And that's like an impossible. It's a very tragic character.
Yeah.
As you know.
And to watch them make those choices, like I always say that usually when men are put into the system, at whatever age you put them in the system, and is kind of where they stay. And it is even more so detrimental when they're put in the system at a very young age, because then the system and society treats them that age. And so now you're watching these two men who have been in the system for most of their lives, trying to figure out what it's like to be men, and what challenges come with that. What does that mean? And we just wanted to show that. We really wanted to show all the cracks of that. We really wanted to show the grit of that, and just like have people care about their survival. Like truly, we really wanted people to understand that they deserve to live and deserve to exist. And I feel like that came through a lot in Dope Thief, especially with Peter's writing and performance.
It's a very unique show. I'm really proud of it, and to be able to do this with Brian. This was because at this point in our lives. I mean, for me, it's like it's not only about the result of the things that you do, which I'm very proud of. I think it's awesome, but it's the process. It's what you gain in the experience, and this for me is a big gain.
Ditto,
this
brother.
is my brother for life.
Well, listen, it's a beautiful, deeply beautiful, layered portrayal. I absolutely loved it. I think it's a career best for both of you.
Thank
and I really
you.
can't wait for audiences to see it. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat with Nerdophiles. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Care.
Thank you. Have a good day.